Picture this. The year was 2015. The head of the world's leading clandestine service, whose operations are a closely guarded secret, was just hacked. The man's name was John Brennan. After many years serving in the low food chain of the intelligence community, Brennan was in charge of the company, but alas, he became a victim of a quite embarrassing security breach. Well, how did it happen? Well, on this fateful day, John Brennan received a call from an unknown number. According to reports, the call went something like this. On a fateful morning in October, John Brennan received what at first appeared to be a prank call from an unknown caller. He answered, and on the other end of the call was an individual of clear, unsavory intentions. Brennan asks how this unknown caller got his number. The caller replies that it was too easy. Brennan asks what the caller wanted, to which he replies,
"I don't want anything. I already f***ing own you."
At this point of this conversation, Brennan could already sense that he was in big trouble. So he asks, "Why are you doing this?" His caller replies in a serious tone, "We want you to stop bombing the Middle East." This call to the CIA director, along with some extremely elaborate breach and release of sensitive information regarding the CIA's activities, became known as hacking of the CIA by a bunch of kids at the time. How did it happen? Who were these kids, and did they ever get caught? To get a good sense of this story, let's take a look at the background of these individuals and the circumstances that led to this security breach. It's quite a fascinating story. This is the story of how the CIA was hacked by a couple of teenagers. To begin this story, meet the hacker known as Kraka. By all accounts, he's a brilliant mind, extremely gifted and adept in cybersecurity and breaching complex security systems. Along with his impressive talent, he's extremely addicted to smoking pot. Kraka's real name is Kane Gamble, and at the time of the hack, he was only 15 years old and lived in Leicestershire in the United Kingdom with his family. As Kraka became conscious of the world around him, he began to show his disdain for the government's corruption, the US policy regarding surveillance, and its foreign policy regarding countries in the Middle East, particularly in Palestine. Kraka blamed the US government for the death and destruction befalling the country, especially in Gaza, and he was ready to do something about it. One of the first things he did was to create a group which would include young hackers like himself, who shared the same political views as he did. This hacktivist group came to be known as Crackers with Attitude, CWA. The objective of the group was simple enough. They would wreak enough havoc on notable individuals within the US intelligence community. You could say that Crackers with Attitude had a mode of operation similar to the popular hacktivist group Anonymous. One of the first notable victims of Kraka's freaky computer skills was James Clapper. If you've heard the name before, it's because Clapper was by no means an ordinary man. Between 2010 and 2017, James Clapper was the US Director of National Intelligence during the Barack Obama administration. Kraka did some research online and was able to get Clapper's phone number. Afterwards, he was able to get into Clapper's personal email and posted vital information from the email on Twitter, or X as it is now known. Next, he rerouted any call intended to be made to Clapper's home number to be connected to the Free Palestine movement. Clapper's number and email and those of his wife was compromised, and it was nothing short of the highest form of humiliation, especially for Clapper, who was in charge of the country's intelligence. But the CWA were by no means done. They were only getting started. At this point, it's time to introduce you to another individual who was instrumental to the security breach on the CIA's director. His name is Justin Liverman, better known as Default. He is an American and was a college student at North Carolina. At the time of the hack on the CIA's director, he was 22 years old. Like Kraka, Default was also critical of America's politics and policies, and he had no objections to doing something about it. As a matter of fact, Default commended Kraka on the breach on James Clapper's personal life. Before meeting Kraka, Default has been part of the popular group of white hats known as Anonymous. He left the group after some time and joined another group of hackers known as AnonSec. As a part of these groups of hackers, Default has been part of campaigns against foreign governments, corporate organizations, and anyone they believe has crossed the line. Meeting Kraka was a high point in Default's career as a hacker. He was about to make history. Although he was not directly involved in the breach on the CIA's director, he played a passive role and was held responsible. How so? Well, after the Clapper incident, Kraka and Default became close friends and regularly chatted online. It's believed that the plan to hack John Brennan was planned by the two. So they concocted a plan to humiliate several top-level government officials in the US, especially those who had ties to the intelligence and law enforcement agencies, starting with John Brennan. According to publicly available statements and confessions made by Kraka, he claimed that he was able to get direct access to Brennan from what was readily available on the internet. Kraka was able to get Brennan's phone number online as it was publicly available. The number was from popular telecommunication giant Verizon. So Kraka posed and disguised as a Verizon employee and made a call to IT support for Verizon and said he was an employee trying to help out a customer in need. Verizon support asked him to provide an employee badge number, and Kraka made one up right in the moment. For some reason, this fake badge number was accepted. The support provided Kraka with everything he needed regarding Brennan's Verizon account information, and just like that, he was in. He was able to get his PIN and email address. That way, he took control of Brennan's American Online account, AOL. From there, he got a private cell number for John Brennan. He shared the number with his new friend Default, and together they began to harass the CIA boss. But Kraka and Default were not done with him. Since he already had access to his AOL account, Kraka started to release screenshots of some private documents. But Default thought bigger. Instead of just releasing screenshots on Twitter, he began to post and share the documents on WikiLeaks. Prominent among these documents was John Brennan's SF-86 application. This was a very important document that included background checks, criminal history, private information, and other details required to gain higher security clearance in the intelligence business. Apart from the SF-86 form, there was sensitive information that included internal communication between President Bush and Brennan. There was another memo with the U.S. Senate Committee on Intelligence regarding standard operating procedure for advanced interrogation techniques, or in simple terms, torture. These documents were never meant to see the light of day. After the dust settled, the US government suffered a loss of over $1.5 million in terms of the breach and what it cost to relocate. After multiple breaches on other government agencies like the FBI and the Department of Justice, there was a nationwide manhunt for the hackers. After some months of investigation, Default was found. He claimed to have been drunk and started spilling the secrets of what he did in past months. According to him, he was being cocky and overconfident, and his judgment was nullified by alcohol. He mentioned his involvement to an acquaintance whom he had bad blood with, and he claimed he was betrayed by this individual. Default's home was invaded by the FBI, and all his gear, including a drive containing thousands of Bitcoin, were seized. The US government charged Default with various counts of cyber terrorism and release of sensitive government information. He was handed a 5-year sentence in a federal penitentiary and was asked to pay damages to the tune of $145,000. As for Kraka, the British police was able to track him down through information provided by arrested members of Krakas with Attitude. His setup was confiscated and he was thrown into jail. Because he was a minor, although he was the mastermind behind the hack, he got a less serious sentence. He was sentenced to a 2-year term in a juvenile correctional facility without any fine. Kraka has been released and says he just wants to live a quiet life and focus on building a career in cybersecurity. It is unclear if Default is still in prison, but there were reports that he had begun to show remorse for his actions even before being sentenced. The whole saga proved to be an embarrassing chain of events for the US government. Without a doubt, the hack on the CIA director will continue to be a reminder on the various threats the US faces and how easy their security can be breached. Kraka and Default will continue to be remembered as the kids who wreaked havoc on the US intelligence system.